Good morning. I'm stood under an ash tree. It is such bright sunlight that I had to find some shade. It might be a bit intermittent, but hopefully the camera can cope with that. So I'm here thinking a lot about summer solstice and that coming for me in a couple of days. Hopefully this will be out by then. And what I wanted to talk about, I suppose it would be better to start from the beginning. So I am an archaeologist. I'm also a pagan witch. And these, I say both things for a reason. I'm very interested in how people used to believe and think without human sacrifice, of course. But I'm very interested in their love of nature. There's the sun. I want all patchwork. And my job, my expertise, I've learned a lot about objects, but a lot of the things that I want to do is to really experience and think about how people used to sidestep slightly. There we go. How people used to view their world and how people would experience things that for us I think we take rather for granted. Is it better if I turn around? Is the sunlight? Oh, I disappeared. I disappeared completely. There's got to be a happy medium. I'm going to go all wandering. Come with me. So one thing that I wanted to look at, disappeared again. Whoa, that's too bright. I can't see a thing. Let's go wandering. One thing I wanted to think about at summer solstice in particular is what people would have experienced themselves at solstice. How that would have felt to them. And one of the things that has massively changed, because we have summer solstice, we know it's the longest day of the year, the most amount of daylight that we get in a 24-hour period. And it's that 24-hour period. I'm going to go under a hawthorn tree, see if that proves better. Is that better, or have I disappeared? That's not too bad. One of the things that we think about a lot is the 24-hour period, is the Gregorian calendar that we live our lives by at the moment. We understand, we're still very solar. We do our year as one rotation of the sun, and our day is, it's the 24 hours that go between sunrise and sunset and sunrise again, although we know it's midnight to midnight, but there's the same amount of time in each thing. And one thing that I think about a lot is what would our experience of a summer solstice be like if we didn't have the calendar to tell us when it is. At the moment it's on the 21st of June, and we know that date. We can write that in our calendar and we can set a reminder on our phones and we can be there on that day. But ancient people couldn't do that. They had to just know. And I'm not massively well learned on the subject of how they would know. Obviously you could just count, and they probably did it from my personal theory is things like Stonehenge were ways of following the shadows. They would know when the sun would rise on between two certain stones, so that it would set within two certain stones. They had worked that out, probably using some form of shadow system that you would use, sort of, if you were Bear Grylls-ing it in the wild somewhere. They knew when it was going to be, they knew when it was coming up, and they would know when the sun hit certain points in the landscape that it was summer solstice. But we don't have that kind of understanding of our landscape anymore. We are very much set by our calendars and our clocks. And consequently, I find that one thing that people talk about a lot is the longest day of the year is when the sun is at its most powerful. And the sun isn't. It's the longest day. It has the most time of which we can see it. But we all know that July and August are hotter months. And so for what it meant to ancient people, I don't think they would have necessarily have thought that this was the day that the sun was most powerful. Perhaps this was the day that the sun was coming into its full strength, because it's after that we often get the heat waves, and also the harvests. Our fruit really comes in at the end of June, going into July and August, rather than before, and certainly not on the actual day. And I think we have so got ourselves into a place of being conditioned into thinking of our months and our seasons as 3 months of spring, 3 months of summer, 3 months of autumn, and 3 months of winter. And then we call this midsummer, and it's right at the beginning of our seasonal summer, our calendar summer. I think that people have lost a way of experiencing time through actually just observing the seasons rather than following the calendar. And I think the way that they perhaps would have experienced it more was that solstice is the midpoint between equinox and equinox. And so you would have had, where the days were equal day and night, that is a switchover, a crossover between two phases of experience in the earth: the phase of cold and night, where death is more likely, to the phase of warmth and light, and where life was more abundant. Going on from that, if you think of it in those terms, that there are two halves of each year, equinox to equinox, midsummer is right slap bang in the middle of them, as midwinter is right slap bang in the middle of them on the reverse. And I think that's more authentic to how ancient people would have experienced time and would have experienced what was going on. I have lost my train of thought. I think this explains what a lot of the in-between holidays, the other Sabbats, are, that being Beltane, Lunasa or Lammas, Samhain and Imbolc. It's very odd to say them without saying the ones in between. You have to just think, next one, skip one, next one, skip one. Anyway, that's not the point of this video. They are more kind of celebrating these times when I think Lunasa really is when the sun is at its most powerful, rather than midsummer. Midsummer is an important day because it is leading into the most abundant time of the year, where we have so much fruit, and supermarkets have rather ruined this for us, but in a way that, you know, we do require. But by thinking about it, on midsummer, of this was a time when you knew you were going into the most abundant time of year, that the sun was having its longest day, the longest time that you would see the sun for the whole year between sunset and sunrise. And that is what you would have got and what you would have experienced. And that, I think, itself would have been like a I've made it kind of thing. And then you've got until the equinox, when there's the switch over, you've got until then to enjoy it, to really experience, you know, the fruits. Like I'm standing under a hawthorn tree right now, and you can see we have the spring flowers, the promise, and then you've also got these berries growing. Some looking better than others. But that's where we're going into. We're going into the fruitful time of the year. And I really think that ancient people would have seen the world very much split into two. And I think there's a lot of thinking like that. I think sometimes we can get too bogged down into what fits with our calendars. You know, it's June and we have July and August, and that's summer. And calling it midsummer or summer solstice, it feels sometimes a bit strange. Like our language does, the two languages, the pagan language and I'd say the Christian language, don't quite match. But I think this is the way that the ancient people would have experienced this. And I think in time in general, we're very lost. We notice certainly when the evenings are getting later, when the mornings are getting earlier, when we have that bright sunshine coming in at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, that can feel, we suddenly really notice it, and we really notice it the opposite as well. But for people, before they had clocks, they couldn't tell, they wouldn't have been able to have anything else apart from the sun telling them. You know, the dawn, noon and dusk were really all that they would have had to have understood the day, and also their just personal feelings about the day. And I've been trying this experiment literally for this morning because I've been thinking about it so much. But I'm on maternity leave at the moment, so I have the luxury of doing this. In that I just didn't look at the clock. I don't know what time I woke up this morning. I don't know what time I ate breakfast. I don't currently know what time it is now. And it's really hard to do because your phones won't let you turn off the time, as far as I know. And so I was having to sort of willfully ignore what my lock screen was saying this morning. I didn't go on my phone much this morning. I use it to read. But it is very strange to have only nature and the sun to give me any indication of time. And it's an interesting experiment. If you just have like one day to do it, because I've only done it for this morning, and it's already changing my perspective. I'm already becoming more sensitive to what the sun is doing, where the shadows are and everything like that. As you know, I was having all that trouble under the ash tree, and it's better under the hawthorn. But I want to live in a way that is more in tune with nature. And I think that, you know, we talk a lot about being addicted to our phones. I think we're honestly addicted to knowing the time all the time. And I remember reading a study on anxiety, and it was saying that when we wake up in the night and we immediately check the time, we release cortisol because it is stressful for us to see the time, whether it be, oh, I've got tons of time left to sleep, or I've got barely any time left to sleep. It stresses us out because we're either thinking, oh goodness, why have I woken up now? And, oh, I've got ages. I hope I can get back to sleep. Otherwise I'm going to be awake for ages. Or, you know, it's later and you go, oh goodness, I really want to go back to sleep, but I have got barely any time. Will I get a good bit of sleep, or will I just feel groggy and things like that? And last night I didn't look at my clock at all when I woke up. Like I said, I'm on maternity leave. I'm up at night. But changed the whole thing for me. I wasn't stressed. I wasn't stressed. I wasn't going like, oh goodness, why am I up at this time, or that's early, or that's late. I was able to just be with my child, and I just wasn't thinking about how much longer I have in bed when I have to wake up at 7 o'clock. Normally I try and wake up at 7 o'clock. Normally I try and wake up at 6 o'clock. That's normally when my daughter wakes up, so around then. But it's never exactly 6. And I think it's just, I think it's the argument of rhythm versus routine. And routine is very regimented. You do this at this time. And I'm one of those people that if it's coming up, if I sort of started late, if it goes, so say I'm going to start writing my next piece of work at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then it gets to like 9 minutes past 10, and I'll be like, oh, well, I barely got any of this hour left. I might as well just go and make a coffee, and maybe I'll start at 10:30 instead, or 10:15. And instead of just starting, because our time, the clocks, they dictate our lives. And that for me is quite a sad thing, because we've lost this understanding of the sun, where the sun is in the sky, how it feels, what we notice of the world around us, because we just quickly look at our microwave or our phones. And I'm trying to try this. It's not going to be perfect, it's not, because other people are on clocks, so I have to know the time. And if I'm meeting someone or anything like that, and sometimes you just need to know, oh goodness, this has gone on far too long, I need to go. But I'm really going to try. And if you get a chance, take a day of not looking at the clock and see how it transforms your day. And it's really hard because so many things have clocks. My oven has a clock, the microwave has a clock, the car has a clock. I'm pretty sure this has a clock, camera, but I haven't looked for it. My phone, we're all on our phones, and it's hard to not look at the time. But give it a try, and maybe if you have a chance. Solstice is on Friday, but maybe on Saturday, give it a try. See how it goes. See how you feel. I mean, or don't. It's your life. But I want to experience what ancient people experience. So I'm going to give this a go, and I'm going to experience solstice as the sun coming into the room at 4 o'clock in the morning, waking me and my daughter up, and I was trying to get back to sleep. And then I'm going to experience the sun all the way through the day, and I'm going to watch the shadows go across the garden, and I'm going to really try and feel what ancient people felt. So that's my thought for solstice, is experience solstice as solstice was intended to be experienced. So it's just you and the sun, and celebration and joy of a coming fruitful year. So I hope you enjoyed this, my first video, and I'd like to do more thinking about ancient thinking in terms of spiritual practice and how we can still do it. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.